Hi, Codies. I'm your host, Tiffany. In this video, we're going to discuss 8 basic data types, which are predefined in Java. And these are also known as primitive data types. The first 4 data types are for storing integers, meaning numbers without any fractional parts. The first data type is a byte. A byte can store integers ranging from -128 to 127, and it used 1 byte of storage. So let me give an example of when a byte data type can be used. Byte data types are normally used if storage space is a concern or when a certain value being stored does not exceed -128 through 127 range. With that being said, we can use a byte to store someone's age because we know there's no one the age of -1. And typically people don't live past the age of 127. However, there are some cases as to how old a person would have been had they lived past the age of 127. In that case, we would use a short data type. A short data type takes up 2 bytes of storage space. It has a range of -32,768 to 32,767. Now, if memory storage space is an issue, we can always move up a size. Moving up a size, the next data type would be an int. A int holds 4 bytes of memory storage, and it has a range of -2 to the 31st power, all the way to 2 to the 31st power minus 1. Now listen, I know this math sounds a bit much, but don't worry about it. Not knowing the precise size of each data type will not make or break the deal. The most important thing is that you're allocating enough memory for whatever you're trying to store. Now let's get back to the int data size. The int data type holds 4 bytes of storage space. So let's just note that ints are the most commonly used data types to store integers. And this is most commonly used because it has the most practical range of storage. But let's suppose we need to store a larger integer and we need more space to do so. In this case, we would use a long. A long data type stores 8 bytes of storage and has a range of -2 to the 63rd power to 2 to the 63rd power minus 1. Now let's suppose we want to store numbers with fractional parts. In this case, we would use a float data type. And a float data type stores 4 bytes of space and range pretty large. It has a precision of 7 digits. And an example of a float would be here, 1.2345667. But let's just say that's not even big enough. So in this case, we would use a double data type. And a double data type stores 8 bytes of space and has a range of -1.79769 something and times 10 to the 308 power, something like that. It has a precision of approximately 15 digits. Please note that by default, whenever you specify a float point number in Java, it automatically considers it to be a double and not a float. In order to treat the float point number as a float, you have to add the suffix "f" to the end of the number. but I highly recommend using double data types unless memory space is a concern. So far, we have discussed 6 data types, but Java has 2 more primitive data types. So the next one is a char, and char stands for character and is used to store a single Unicode character such as a, ampersand, and it uses 2 bytes of memory. Last but not least, the Boolean data type. The Boolean data type can only hold 2 values, being true or even false. Booleans are used to control a flow statement, and we'll discuss that in a later video. Now, let's create a program. Inside this program, we're going to declare and name a variable. But before we do this, let's ask ourselves what type of information are we trying to store? In the event that we are trying to store someone's age, we can use the byte data type. After using the byte data type, we can name our byte data type age. This is how you declare it. However, if storage space isn't a concern, we will most commonly use int age. Now, let's suppose we know or we want to set the age number. To do this, we type int age. Some people call this the equal sign, but in reality, it's the assignment operator. 27, semicolon. Setting a variable to a value is called the initialization. And to do this, again, we use the assignment operator. To print this to the screen, we type system.out.println parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we're going to leave the variable name, which is called age. Now let's create a char. To do this, we type char, C-H-A-R. We're going to name our char letter. Use the assignment operator in the variable, I'm sorry, not the variable, but the letter A. To print this out, we type system.out.println and our variable name inside the parentheses. And we make sure we have that closed with a semicolon. So let's run our program and print it to the screen. And voila, it works. We have 27 and we have the letter A. Now, before we create more variables and assign values, I want to point out that variables represent the type of data being stored. Meaning, are we trying to store an int, a char, a double, and so on? So, it's a good rule of thumb to name your variables meaningful names. So this means avoid naming variables a and n and. So to give an example, I named my variable letter, and I also stored a letter in that variable name. Those two are related, and that's an example of a variable with a meaningful name. If you read letter, you would assume a letter is stored in it, in which it is. There are some reserved words that can't be used while naming your variables, and we'll discuss what they are in a later video. At this time, this is what you need to know just to get started. Okay, so let's create more variables and assign values to them. We're going to system.out.println. Inside the parentheses, we're going to leave the variable name. We're going to print out each value that's stored in the variable. So let's run our program and print it to the screen. Voila, it worked. We printed the value stored in each variable. Okay, Codies, that just about wraps things up. In this video, we have discussed what data types are. We have created and initialized variables. And lastly, we have printed them to the screen. If you find this video helpful, don't hesitate to like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.